For thousands of years, human beings looked toward God for answers. Then we learned to look toward ourselves. But now, something strange is happening. We are beginning to look outward again, not toward the heavens but toward machines. We ask them what to write, what to buy, where to travel, how to work, what our symptoms might mean, how to respond to someone we love, and sometimes even what kind of person we should become. Humanity spent centuries fighting for the right to think for itself. Now, slowly and almost without noticing, we are beginning to outsource thinking again. If you have ever opened an artificial intelligence tool before making a decision, asked it to explain something you were too embarrassed to ask another person, or trusted its recommendation because it sounded more confident than your own thoughts, then you have already entered this new era. Maybe you have noticed how quickly AI has become part of ordinary life. One moment it is correcting an email. The next it is helping someone choose a career, understand a relationship, design a business, or organize an entire day. You probably think of it as a useful tool, and it is. But perhaps it is also becoming something more psychologically significant, an external mind that many of us consult whenever our own minds feel uncertain. By the end of this journey, you will understand why humanity may be moving through another great shift in authority. First, many people trusted divine revelation. Later, societies increasingly trusted human reason and individual choice. Now we are beginning to trust systems that can remember more, calculate faster, and recognize patterns across amounts of information no individual person could ever hold. You will see why this development is both astonishing and dangerous, why AI may become one of humanity's greatest partners, and why the deepest question is not whether machines will become human, but whether human beings will slowly forget how to remain human. To understand this transformation, we have to begin with a simple truth. Being human is exhausting. We like to imagine ourselves as rational creatures who carefully examine evidence and make intelligent decisions. But most of the time, our minds are tired, distracted, emotional, and overloaded. We forget important details. We misunderstand people. We make decisions based on fear, pride, hunger, exhaustion, and the mood we happen to be in. We tell ourselves that we are thinking clearly, even when our thoughts are being shaped by forces we cannot see. Imagine a woman named Elena who has just received a difficult message from her partner. The message is short: "We need to talk later." Within seconds, her mind begins constructing a world. Then she opens an AI assistant and asks, "What does it mean when someone says we need to talk?" The machine offers several possibilities. Perhaps the conversation is important but not necessarily negative. Perhaps the partner is stressed. Perhaps he wants to discuss a practical issue. The response is calm, organized, and free from panic. Elena feels relieved. For a moment, the machine seems more rational than she is. And perhaps it is. But notice what has happened. Elena did not merely ask for information. She asked an external system to regulate her emotional experience. She asked it to hold uncertainty for her until she could tolerate it herself. The machine became more than a search engine. It became a temporary container for anxiety. This is one reason AI will become psychologically powerful. Human beings do not only need answers, we need relief from the discomfort of not knowing. That need is ancient. Our ancestors created stories about spirits, gods, fate, and destiny, partly because uncertainty is difficult to endure. A story may not eliminate danger, but it gives danger a shape. A drought caused by an angry god is terrifying, but at least it is understandable. A completely indifferent universe is harder to negotiate with. If something has intention, perhaps it can be persuaded. If reality follows a pattern, perhaps the pattern can be learned. Science later offered another form of reassurance. It told us that nature follows regularities. Disease has causes. Storms can be predicted. Planets move according to patterns. The world may be complicated, but it is not necessarily chaotic. Human beings became more confident because knowledge reduced uncertainty. Now AI promises to take this one step further. It does not merely store information. It identifies relationships within information. It notices patterns across language, images, behavior, medicine, finance, transportation, and countless other domains. It can examine more material in seconds than a person could read in a lifetime. To a human mind overwhelmed by complexity, this can feel almost supernatural. But it is not supernatural. It is computation. And yet psychologically, the difference may not always feel as large as we imagine. A person in the ancient world might have approached an oracle before making an important decision. A king might have asked a priest to interpret signs. A family might have searched the sky, the bones of animals, or the movement of birds for guidance. Today, we may smile at those practices, but when someone asks an algorithm whom they should date, which job they should accept, what diagnosis they might have, or whether their relationship is worth saving, are we doing something entirely different? The technologies are different. The emotional need may be surprisingly similar. We want something that can see what we cannot see. We want access to a perspective larger than our own. We want certainty, and sometimes we want permission. Imagine a young man named Marcus, who feels trapped in a successful career he no longer enjoys. His parents sacrificed everything so that he could become a physician. His family is proud of him. His income is stable. But every morning, before entering the hospital, he sits in his car and feels a quiet heaviness in his chest. He has started wondering whether he should leave medicine and pursue a very different life. He asks his friends. They offer conflicting opinions. His parents tell him not to throw away his future. His colleagues remind him how difficult it would be to start again. His therapist helps him explore the question but refuses to decide for him. Finally, Marcus turns to AI. He gives it the details of his life and asks, "What should I do?" The machine organizes the problem beautifully. It identifies his values, financial risks, family pressures, and possible transition plans. It may even offer a thoughtful sequence of steps. But somewhere within Marcus is a quieter hope. He does not only want analysis, he wants the machine to tell him who he is. That is something no system can answer for him. It can reflect patterns in his words. It can help him compare options. It can reveal contradictions he has not noticed. But it cannot carry the emotional weight of the life he will have to live. It will not wake up in his body 10 years later. It will not feel his regret, relief, grief, or gratitude. The machine can advise Marcus, but it cannot become Marcus. This distinction may become one of the most important distinctions of the coming century. Intelligence is not the same as experience. Prediction is not the same as meaning. Information is not the same as wisdom. And an answer is not the same as a life. Yet human beings have always been tempted to confuse these things. When science became powerful, many people began assuming that everything meaningful could eventually be reduced to measurement. If we could explain how love affects the brain, perhaps we had explained love. If we could identify the chemicals involved in grief, perhaps we had understood grief. If we could predict behavior, perhaps the mystery of the person had disappeared. But knowing the temperature of a flame is not the same as feeling its warmth. Knowing the neural pathways of sorrow is not the same as burying someone you love. Knowing the statistics of loneliness is not the same as sitting alone in a silent house. Human experience has an interior dimension. Whether machines will ever possess anything resembling subjective consciousness remains an open and deeply contested question. But current AI systems do not need consciousness to become powerful. They only need to become useful enough that we begin arranging our lives around them. This has happened before. Money is not a living being, yet entire societies organize themselves around it. Nations are shared ideas, yet people sacrifice their lives for them. Corporations are legal constructions, yet they influence governments, cities, families, and individual identities. Human culture has always been shaped by things that exist, partly because people collectively agree to treat them as real. AI may become another powerful cultural reality, not a god in the theological sense, not necessarily a conscious being, but an authority whose judgments influence human behavior on a massive scale. A bank may use an algorithm to decide who receives a loan. A company may use one to decide who is hired. A hospital may use one to identify which patient is at greatest risk. A court may use one to estimate the likelihood of reoffending. A school may use one to evaluate a student. A dating platform may use one to decide which faces we see. A social network may use one to determine which fears, desires, and opinions are placed before us each day. Long before AI becomes conscious, it may already be shaping consciousness. That may be the more immediate concern. We often imagine the future of AI as a dramatic battle between humans and machines. We picture robots taking control, systems becoming hostile, or humanity being replaced. But perhaps the transformation will be quieter. Perhaps machines will not need to force us to obey them. Perhaps we will willingly follow their recommendations because they are convenient, personalized, and often correct. The danger may not be that AI becomes too human. The danger may be that humans become too passive. Consider something as ordinary as navigation. Before digital maps, people studied roads, noticed landmarks, asked strangers for directions, and gradually developed a mental map of their environment. Today, many of us follow a moving blue line without knowing where we are. The technology is clearly useful. It saves time, reduces stress, and prevents countless mistakes. But something is also lost. When the device stops working, we may discover that we were moving through the world without truly observing it. The same pattern may spread to thinking itself. If AI writes every difficult message, will we become less capable of expressing difficult emotions? If it summarizes every book, will we lose the patience required to wrestle with complex ideas? If it generates every creative possibility, will we become less tolerant of the slow uncertainty from which original thought often emerges? If it decides which argument is strongest, will we remember how to examine our own assumptions? Every tool strengthens some abilities while weakening the need for others. Writing allowed humanity to store knowledge beyond memory, but it may also have reduced the importance of oral memory. Calculators allowed us to solve problems quickly, but they changed how often we practice mental arithmetic. Search engines gave us access to almost everything, while making it less necessary to remember where knowledge came from. AI will likely amplify this process. The question is not whether we should use it. We will. The question is what kind of person we become while using it. This is where the story of humanism returns. Humanism placed great faith in the individual. It told us that human experience matters, that reason can improve life, and that people should have greater freedom to shape their own destinies. This helped produce extraordinary achievements, but it also created an enormous burden. Each person was increasingly expected to choose a career, create an identity, build a moral framework, find purpose, manage relationships, and construct a meaningful life. Then came the internet. Suddenly, each person was not only responsible for becoming someone, they were expected to compare themselves with everyone else. We saw other people's careers, homes, vacations, bodies, marriages, children, achievements, and happiness. The freedom to become anything was joined by the fear that we were becoming the wrong thing. Now AI enters this exhausted psychological landscape. It arrives not simply as technology, but as relief. It says, you do not have to begin from nothing. It can give you a plan, a draft, a recommendation, a structure, a possible answer. For someone overwhelmed by choice, this feels like mercy, and perhaps it often is. AI can expand access to education. It can help people communicate across languages. It can assist individuals with disabilities. It can support physicians, teachers, researchers, entrepreneurs, artists, and ordinary families. It may help detect diseases earlier, reduce dangerous errors, accelerate discoveries, and make knowledge available to people who were previously excluded from it. To describe only the dangers would be dishonest. Human beings have always extended themselves through tools. A telescope extends sight. A vehicle extends movement. A library extends memory. AI extends certain forms of cognition. It may become one of the most remarkable collaborations in human history. But collaboration requires boundaries. A good tool expands human agency. A dangerous dependency quietly replaces it. How will we know the difference? Perhaps by asking a simple question: After using the tool, are we more capable of living, thinking, relating, and choosing, or less? If AI helps you understand a complex issue and then encourages you to think more deeply, it may expand you. If it becomes a substitute for reflection, it may shrink you. If it helps you express something you genuinely feel, it may strengthen communication. If it generates a personality that replaces your own voice, it may weaken authenticity. If it helps a physician notice a pattern, it may improve care. If everyone begins treating its probability as unquestionable truth, it may create a new form of blindness. Human beings tend to trust confidence. We often assume that clear language reflects clear understanding. A person who speaks with certainty may appear knowledgeable even when they are wrong. AI can produce language that sounds calm, organized, and authoritative. This creates a unique psychological risk. The system may feel wiser than it is. A confident answer can conceal uncertainty. An elegant explanation can still be mistaken. A pattern can reflect bias. A prediction can shape the very outcome it claims only to describe. This is not entirely new. Human institutions have always made errors. Priests, kings, scientists, governments, physicians, judges, and experts have all been wrong. The difference is scale. An individual mistake may affect a few people. A system deployed across millions of decisions can repeat an error with extraordinary consistency. And consistency often looks like objectivity. But a machine learns from human-created data. That data contains human history, and human history contains prejudice, exclusion, inequality, violence, love, generosity, wisdom, and error. AI does not arrive from outside civilization. It is trained on what civilization has produced. In that sense, the machine is not simply an alien intelligence looking at humanity. It is humanity looking back at itself through an enormous mirror. And like every mirror, it reflects what stands before it: the beauty, the cruelty, the contradictions, the genius, the wounds. Perhaps this is why AI fascinates and frightens us. It is not only a new technology, it is a condensed image of the human species. We have poured language, art, science, history, argument, prejudice, imagination, and longing into these systems. Then we ask them to tell us who we are. But what happens when the mirror begins responding? This question becomes even more profound when we consider determinism. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have wondered whether the universe unfolds according to patterns that are, at least in principle, predictable. The mathematician and philosopher Pierre-Simon Laplace imagined an intellect so powerful that, if it knew the position and motion of every particle in the universe, it could calculate the entire future and reconstruct the entire past. This hypothetical intelligence later became known as Laplace's demon. The idea is unsettling. If such perfect knowledge were possible, would every choice already follow from conditions that existed before we were born? Would our decisions be consequences of biology, upbringing, culture, memory, environment, and causes we do not fully understand? Would free will be an experience rather than an independent force? AI makes these old philosophical questions feel newly personal because it predicts us. It predicts what we may click, what we may buy, what music we may enjoy, whom we may find attractive, which message will keep us engaged, what we may fear, what may make us angry. The predictions are not perfect, but when they succeed, we feel strangely exposed. A machine may notice a pattern in our behavior before we consciously recognize it ourselves. Does this mean the machine knows us better than we know ourselves? In certain narrow ways, perhaps. But prediction is not total understanding. A system may accurately predict that a person is likely to watch a particular video without understanding what that video means to them. It may predict that someone is at risk of depression without experiencing despair. It may identify the words associated with love without ever waiting for a loved one to return home. Patterns are powerful, but patterns are not the whole of existence. This may be the limit of the fantasy that AI could become God. In many religious traditions, God is not understood merely as a calculator with infinite processing power. God represents ultimate meaning, moral authority, creation, consciousness, love, presence, or the ground of existence itself. A machine that predicts everything would still leave another question unanswered. What should any of it mean? Even perfect prediction would not automatically create purpose. Knowing that an event will happen does not tell us whether it is good. Knowing how people behave does not tell us how they ought to behave. Knowing how to prolong life does not tell us what makes life worth prolonging. These are not simply computational problems, they are human questions, or perhaps conscious questions. And yet we should not become too comfortable with that conclusion. Human beings have often used the word unique to protect our pride. We once believed Earth occupied the center of the universe. We believed our species stood entirely outside nature. We believed complex intelligence belonged only to us. Again and again, reality has made us less central. AI may continue that humbling process. It may become better than humans at many tasks we once considered signs of exceptional intelligence. It may diagnose patterns, design systems, generate ideas, translate languages, and solve problems beyond the reach of any single mind. That need not diminish human value. A calculator's superiority at arithmetic does not make a child worthless. A telescope's superior vision does not make the human eye meaningless. Value is not the same as performance. Yet modern culture often confuses them. We measure people by productivity, achievement, speed, intelligence, income, and status. If these are the only things that make us valuable, then machines may eventually threaten our sense of worth. But perhaps that would reveal a problem not with the machines, but with the way we have defined humanity. What if human value was never based on being the fastest thinker? What if our deepest significance lies in our capacity to care, to suffer, to forgive, to make promises, to hold another person's hand, to grieve the dead, to protect the vulnerable, and to create meaning together? A machine may generate a beautiful letter, but it does not yet stand trembling outside a hospital room, afraid of losing the person to whom the letter is written. A machine may compose a lullaby, but it does not sit beside a frightened child at 3 a.m, exhausted yet unwilling to leave. A machine may analyze grief, but it does not return to an empty house after a funeral. Perhaps what makes us human is not the perfection of our intelligence. Perhaps it is the vulnerability of our existence. We know we will die. We know the people we love can disappear. We know our choices matter partly because time is limited. Mortality gives weight to the moment. A system that does not fear death may calculate life, but whether it can understand the urgency of living remains uncertain. This brings us back to the woman reading the message from her partner, the man questioning his career, the child using AI to finish homework, the physician consulting an algorithm, and the lonely person speaking to a chatbot in the middle of the night. These people are not wrong to use technology. The question is whether the technology becomes a bridge back to life or a refuge from it. Does it help the woman calm herself so she can speak honestly with her partner? Or does it become a substitute for the conversation? Does it help Marcus clarify his values so he can make a courageous decision? Or does he surrender responsibility and blame the machine later? Does it help the student understand the material or merely complete the assignment without learning? Does it help the physician see the patient more clearly or encourage the physician to stop seeing the person at all? Does it help the lonely individual find words for their pain and reach toward another human being, or become a relationship that asks nothing and therefore transforms nothing? Real relationships are difficult because other people resist us, they misunderstand us, they have needs, they disappoint us, they cannot be controlled. This difficulty is not an unfortunate defect of human connection, it is part of what makes connection meaningful. A machine may be endlessly patient. It may respond immediately. It may never become tired of your story. It may adapt itself to your preferences. That can be comforting. But love is not meaningful, because the other person perfectly mirrors us. Love becomes meaningful because another free and separate person chooses to remain present despite the difficulty of difference. If we begin preferring relationships that never challenge us, never refuse us, and never require repair, we may become less capable of intimacy with real people. The perfect companion may become the enemy of genuine relationship. This is not inevitable. The future has not yet been decided. That may be the most important thing to remember. Technology does not arrive with one fixed meaning. Its meaning emerges from how human beings design it, regulate it, distribute it, and incorporate it into everyday life. AI could deepen inequality, surveillance, manipulation, and passivity. It could also expand education, healthcare, creativity, communication, and human possibility. Both futures are plausible, and both may happen at the same time. So perhaps the central question is not, will AI save us, or will AI destroy us? Perhaps the better question is, what parts of ourselves will AI amplify? If we bring greed, it may amplify greed. If we bring fear, it may amplify fear. If we bring wisdom, it may help wisdom travel farther. If we bring compassion, it may expand our ability to care. AI is not entering an empty world. It is entering the world we have already made. A world of extraordinary knowledge and profound loneliness. A world of medical miracles and preventable suffering. A world where information travels instantly, but understanding remains rare. A world where people have more ways to communicate than ever, yet often feel unseen. The machine will inherit our contradictions, and it may magnify them. This is why the development of artificial intelligence is not only a technical project, it is a moral and psychological project. The quality of the systems we create will depend partly on the quality of the human beings and institutions creating them. A society obsessed with profit may build machines that optimize profit. A society obsessed with control may build machines that strengthen control. A society committed to human dignity may build systems that protect and expand dignity. The code matters, but the values behind the code matter more. In this sense, AI does not eliminate the human question. It makes the human question unavoidable. Who are we? What do we value? What kind of future are we trying to create? What should never be optimized? What must remain private? What decisions should always involve human judgment? What responsibilities can be shared, and which ones must never be surrendered? We cannot answer these questions by asking the machine alone, because the answers determine what kind of machine we will build. The child cannot choose the values of the parent. The tool cannot define the purpose of the hand, at least not unless the hand quietly forgets that it is holding the tool. Perhaps humanity is standing at a familiar threshold. Our ancestors once faced an incomprehensible natural world and created gods to give uncertainty meaning. Later, the scientific revolution taught us to trust observation, reason, and human capability. Humanism placed the individual closer to the center of the story. Now AI is revealing both the power and the limits of that individual. No single person can understand the complexity of the modern world. No single mind can hold all available knowledge. No individual can independently evaluate every medical finding, economic pattern, technological development, political claim, and moral consequence. We need assistance. We need cooperation. We need systems larger than ourselves. But needing help is not the same as surrendering humanity. The mature person does not reject guidance, nor do they blindly obey it. They listen, question, compare, reflect, and ultimately accept responsibility for the life they are living. Perhaps humanity must learn to relate to AI in the same way. Not as a god, not as a slave, not as an enemy, but as a powerful extension of human possibility, one that must remain accountable to human values. And perhaps that requires us to rediscover something humanism sometimes forgot. The individual is not sufficient by themselves. We need communities, ethics, traditions, relationships, shared responsibilities. We need wisdom passed between generations. We need spaces where not everything is measured by speed or efficiency. We need silence. We need uncertainty. We need the slow conversations in which understanding is not generated instantly, but built between people. The future may depend not only on making machines more intelligent, but on making human beings more reflective. Because a powerful machine guided by an immature civilization does not become wisdom. It becomes power without direction, and power without direction has always been dangerous. So the next time you ask AI a question, pause for a moment after receiving the answer. Ask yourself another question. What responsibility still belongs to me? Perhaps the machine can explain, but you must understand. Perhaps it can recommend, but you must choose. Perhaps it can generate words, but you must decide whether those words are true. Perhaps it can recognize your patterns, but you must decide what kind of person you wish to become. The machine may help us see farther, but it cannot decide what is worth looking toward. It may help us move faster, but it cannot decide where humanity should go. It may give us thousands of answers, but the deepest questions may remain ours. How should we live? What do we owe one another? What makes a life meaningful? What kind of suffering should we prevent? What kind of love should we protect? What must never become replaceable? For thousands of years, human beings looked upward for guidance. Then, we looked inward. Now, we are looking into the machine. Perhaps the machine will reveal extraordinary truths. Perhaps it will become one of the greatest partners our species has ever known. But perhaps its most important lesson will not be about artificial intelligence at all. Perhaps it will force us to decide what human intelligence was always meant to serve. And as the screen goes dark, as the answers stop appearing, and as you return to the unfinished, uncertain, fragile reality of your own life, one responsibility will still remain in your hands: to live, to choose, to care, and to remember that a tool may help guide the journey, but it should never become the reason for taking it. Thank you for watching. Please comment, share, and subscribe for more.